everyone, it's your girl kkurlykass. If you're new here, welcome to my channel where I share my experiences as a mental health therapist, mother, and curly girl. Today, I'm going to be sharing my story on how I got pregnant on an IUD. First things first, you may be asking yourself, what is an IUD? So an IUD is a form of birth control. It stands for intrauterine device. This is a specific kind of birth control that is implanted inside of your cervix. Lots of fun, real invasive, but very, very effective at the same time. Or so I thought. Now, like I said, an IUD is a form of birth control, and some women use birth control as a means to help with period cramps for regulation of their period cycles, but not me. I was using an IUD as a means of birth control so that I wouldn't get pregnant. So we were not planning on starting a family for at least another 2 to 3 years. I was hoping to start when I was maybe about 28 or 29 years old. Now, before I get into my experience and my journey with an IUD, I think it's important to break down a little bit about IUDs in general. So there are several types of IUDs. And at the time that I got mine put in back in maybe January or February of 2015, where I was on the Mirena. Now, the Mirena was probably the most popular at the time. Before that, I had been on the pill. I'm a very forgetful person, so the pill just wasn't really working out for me, and I really did not want to get pregnant. So I decided to go and talk to my OB, and we decided that an IUD would be the best option for me. Now, at the time, the Mirena was the most popular IUD. It's the one that everybody hears about. It's the one that you see on TV on the commercials. And that's sort of why I decided to go with it. I didn't really explore too many other types of IUDs, and so I just went with what I had always seen on TV and what I had heard people talking about. However, now there are several types of IUDs, and I'm sure at the time there were too, just not as popular. Now other ones like kkurlykass are becoming a lot more popular, where they are still hormonal, but they have a little bit less hormones than something like the Mirena does. And there's also the non-hormonal option, which is the Paragard. Now, the Paragard has been around for a while as well. But like I said, I just decided to go with the Mirena because it was the most popular at the time. It was the one that I was familiar with, and I just thought, well, let's just go with it. Now, my experience with the Mirena at first was pretty positive. I really didn't have too many complaints. I would get some pretty bad cramping here and there, like if I got up and ran too fast, or if I did something too quickly, I would notice that I would get really bad like period cramps, almost is what it felt like in my stomach, except it was like stabbing pain, and it was not near my period. Something nice that I liked about the Mirena was that I didn't get my period every month. I would get it maybe once every 3 months. And for me, that was really nice. And it was also a lot lighter when I did get it. So the days were maybe 3 to 4 days that I would get my period every 3 months. And as a woman, you know, a period is a pain in the ass enough. But when you have the chance to be able to have a lighter period and a shorter period, you go for it. About 2.5, maybe almost 3 years into using the Mirena, I started having some serious issues. I started having reoccurring infections that were super painful. It was really disgusting. It was not pleasant, and I could not get rid of them. I was doing over-the-counter remedies, I was doing at-home remedies, I was going to see my OB, getting prescriptions, and nothing seemed to work. The only thing that helped were the prescription medications, and even those just seemed to keep the infections at bay. So it started off as an infection every couple of months, maybe every 6 months, went down to every 3 months, and then every month, and then it was every couple of weeks. I could not shake an infection. And it was, like I said, super painful, really disgusting. If you're a woman, like, it's not cute. You don't want to be walking around feeling gross, feeling in pain, and it was just not cute. It was not a good look. So I went to my OB and I talked to them and I told them, look, I'm having all of these issues with the Mirena. I'm thinking about switching. Is it possible to switch to another IUD? They told me, of course, gave me my options, and I decided to go with a Paragard. Now, I know some people might be seeing this and thinking, why would you go from one IUD to another IUD when you clearly had issues? So, let me explain myself real quick. I decided to go with another IUD because my OBs thought that the reason why I was getting these recurrent infections was because of the hormones that were in the Mirena. They thought it was just too much for my body and that I should try something hormone-free. Now, the Paragard is the only only form of birth control that is hormone free. Now, other than condoms and other than abstaining from sex, which, let's be real, neither one of those was going to happen. So I decided to go with the only other form of hormone-free birth control because I thought, in my mind, that makes sense. If my body is reacting negatively to these hormones, then I should have something that is hormone-free. And so I switched to the Paragard. It was a pretty quick procedure. If you've ever had an IUD done, you know that you go into the office, they examine you, you lay back, and they have a tool that helps put, I don't want to sound too like graphic or gross, but put the IUD in its place. So they show you what it looks like beforehand, and then they show you exactly what tool that they're going to use. They open you up, like I said, they clean everything, make sure that you're all good before, and it's all sterile. They use the tool to help them, and then they say you're going to feel a little cramp, and then you feel a very intense cramping sensation at the bottom of your abdomen, almost like you're on your period, but you're not. It's really weird because I've never experienced that where someone says you're gonna feel a cramp now, and then boom, you do. So it is somewhat painful. Some people bleed, some people don't. I bled a little bit when they put in the Mirena. It wasn't anything too crazy, honestly. It wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be. Like I said, it felt like period cramps, and then it was over. And it's effective right away. It's not like the pill where you have to wait a month before you can use it and before it's effective, I'll say. So they put in my Mirena the first time around. That was all fine. Everything went smoothly. I didn't have any infections. Everything was good. They measure out the strings, the metallic strings that are left hanging out so that they can pull it out when you are all done with it. And they cut it, made sure that it was at an appropriate length. Everything is good. They have you lay down for a couple minutes on your side just in case, because some people get really dizzy. Some people are a little dramatic. Some people, you know, have very low pain tolerance and they need to lay down after they get it implanted. And then you stand up, you get dressed, and you go on your way. So that was my experience with the Mirena. When I was switching from the Mirena to the Paragard, now that was the most painful process that I had had. It hurt so badly to get one IUD pulled out and another one put back in, all in the same day. They took out my Mirena and implanted my Paragard right away. Everything was fine. They cut my strings. Everything was exactly the same as it was with the Mirena. I had some severe cramping afterwards. I barely made it to my house. I actually didn't even drive home. I think I went to my mom's house because it was closer. So I just had a lot of cramping. It was super painful for me. But the IUD worked immediately. It was just fine. I had some bleeding afterwards, but it wasn't anything extensive. Like sometimes you see people saying that they'll have some pretty serious bleeding for like a month, 2 months afterwards. Mine was a couple of days and then it was over, and then I got my period regularly. So the difference between the Paragard and the Mirena is not only the hormone level, but for me, I had my period just like I regularly would with the Paragard. So it came on the same time every month. It came every month consistently, and it was back to its original flow. So the heaviness was the same as it was before I had ever had the Mirena. It was exactly the same time of month, and it lasted for 5 to 7 days, just like it did before I had the Mirena. So it was almost like I wasn't on anything because I didn't have any hormones into my body. I didn't have anything foreign other than this Paragard that was inside. Mind you, we were not planning on getting pregnant anytime soon. We were hoping, like I said, another 2 to 3 years. However, things sort of took a turn, and in the months leading up to me finding out that I was pregnant, my life was a mess. So my family, meaning like my parents and my siblings and I, had been going through some really serious shit. And it was probably the hardest time that I have had in a really long time with my family. Me and my family are really, really close, and we rarely have arguments. And during this time, things were pretty bad. They were very chaotic. It was very dramatic. There was a lot going on, and I was arguing with my sister, I was arguing with my parents, I was arguing with my other siblings. Like, it was a mess. It was like we should have had a novela done on us, because it was insane, to say the least. And that's another video for another day. I had gotten into a car accident in January, and my car was totaled. And 3 days later, when I went to my mom's house, because that's where my mail goes, went to my mom's house to go pick up my mail after I had just finished paying for my car to get out of the lot and had to get it towed. I got a letter that my license was going to be suspended for a speeding ticket that I never got. Like I said, another video for another day. But that was the stress level that I was under at the time. So my period was late, and I really didn't notice it at first because, like I said, all of the stress that was going on, I was fighting every day with my family, arguments, crying. It was just a lot. And so when I first noticed, maybe about a week after my period was supposed to come but didn't, I was just like, you know what, I'm just stressed out, my period's gonna come, it's not that big of a deal. And I was dealing with some other stuff, so my period was the last thing on my mind. Also, like I said, because we were not planning on getting pregnant, and I didn't think that I could get pregnant on the IUD. I mean, it was less than a 1% chance. Like, it is the most effective form of birth control, like I said, other than not having sex. So my fiance was in a pretty bad car accident a few years prior, and we didn't know if he was going to be able to have kids. And it was just never something that we thought would happen accidentally. Like, we always thought that we would have to plan it and try to get pregnant. A week after my period came and went, and then we were moving on to 2 weeks, and I thought to myself, okay, this is a little strange, but maybe stress, maybe, you know, sometimes your ovulation cycle moves. And so I thought, well, maybe my period is just changing, you know, from the very end of the month, maybe it's going to come in the beginning of next month. So this is the end of January. So February rolls around, it's about the first week of February, and I start noticing that I'm feeling nauseous. It's like, oh man, like my stomach is hurting. I think I'm getting sick. Like, I think I'm coming down with something. And, you know, it came and went. And so February 11th rolls around. And so I, later on that night, went to CVS and I bought a pregnancy test, just thinking, like, it's not going to come back positive. Like, I can't get pregnant. Like, there's no way. But I'm also late, and I'm also nauseous. So I'm like logically thinking to myself, there's no way I can be pregnant while I'm on this birth control. And also, I don't even know if Anthony and I can get pregnant right now. And also, there's this little teeny tiny voice in the back of my mind that's like, you're pregnant. You're definitely pregnant. And I go and I take the test. Immediately, 2 lines show up, and I'm thinking to myself, there's no way. And I remember I take the test and I'm just looking at it and I am just in shock. I cannot believe that this says pregnant. And I am up against the wall and I just fall to the floor, and I'm just like crouching with this test in my hand. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. And then also, I hear that little voice creeping back in, and I'm like, I knew it. I knew I was pregnant. Now, my mind was going a million miles a minute, and I was nowhere near Anthony, my fiance, when I found out that I was pregnant. And the reason why I didn't tell him that I was pregnant that night was because I still had the Paragard implanted in my cervix. So I was really worried about what was going to happen, and what does this really mean? Can I really be pregnant on a Paragard? And so I called my OB the next day and I told them, I said, hey, I took a pregnancy test yesterday and it came back positive. Also, I'm on the Paragard. And they were scrambling on the phone. They were like, okay, give me 1 second. I need to call the nurse. We need to call the doctor. We need to figure out what we're gonna do, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like kind of freaking out, and I had to get ready to go to work, but I lived really far away from my OB at the time. And so I'm on the phone with them and they're like, well, you need to come in right away. Like today you need to come in because we need to do a pregnancy test. And if you are pregnant, we need to take a look at you and we need to take out that IUD immediately. So I'm freaking out now. So after I told Anthony that I was pregnant, he called out of work, I called out of work, and we made our way to my OB to get a pregnancy test done there. So basically the nurse explained to me that in order for anyone to get a positive pregnancy test, you have to have a certain level of hormones in your blood system. So they do a P test and then they drew blood from me as well. So they did the P test. They said immediately it came back positive for just a regular over-the-counter pregnancy test. They had my blood sample so that they could run it and see what my hormone levels were. And if it's, I think, above 2,000, then they're able to schedule an ultrasound. And in that moment, they said, well, because your pregnancy test is coming back positive so quickly, we think that you definitely are pregnant. And so they went in and they pulled out my Paragard. They're asking a lot of different questions. How are you feeling? Do you know if your Paragard has dislodged, if it's gone anywhere? Because that's the dangerous part about getting pregnant on an IUD. And so I was really worried when I first found out that I was pregnant from the doctor and they confirmed, yes, you are pregnant, that I would have an ectopic pregnancy. Now, an ectopic pregnancy is when the baby implants in anywhere other than the uterus, and that's super dangerous and it is life-threatening. And so they will go ahead and remove the baby if you have an ectopic pregnancy because it is so dangerous. So it can be fatal to both the mother and the baby because the baby's not meant to grow for 9 months anywhere except for the uterus. So I was really worried about that in the very beginning. After I went to the OB and they took out my IUD, they held onto my blood sample, said they would run it and give me a call back. They called me back and told me, yep, you're definitely pregnant. Now we just need to schedule an ultrasound to make sure that the baby is in the uterus where it's supposed to be and it's not anywhere else. Because when you get pregnant on an IUD, that's the risk that you run. And so I had to wait 2 weeks until they could schedule an ultrasound because at that point at the doctor, they told me that they believed I was about 6 weeks pregnant and it wouldn't show up on an ultrasound until about 8 weeks is what they told me. So they said, wait 2 weeks. We scheduled one. And those 2 weeks were so hard. It was so hard for me to stay level-headed, to not think about the worst case scenario and be positive. I was so worried. I had so many different things running through my mind. Like, I am not even supposed to be pregnant right now. How are we gonna do this? You know, I'm supposed to be getting married next year. I am not ready to be a mom. I did not plan on being a mom right now. / I'm so happy and excited because this news came at the worst time of my life and it is everything that I've ever wanted. I've always wanted to be a mom and it came at a time in my life where things were so terrible that it made me feel hopeful, and yet at the same time things were so terrible that I was so scared. Now throughout those 2 weeks I had talked a lot with Anthony and we had a lot of conversations about what if this is an ectopic pregnancy, you know, what are we going to do and how are we going to feel about what has to be done, and that was really hard. And it was really hard for us because, like I said, we didn't think that we could get pregnant. We didn't know if it was going to be possible. And all of a sudden, one day you're going through your regular everyday routine and everything is normal. And then the next day, boom, everything changes. And now your whole life is going to be completely rearranged, turned upside down and totally different without your consent or control. And I think that was, like I said, one of the hardest things was processing those feelings of not being in control, not planning for this pregnancy, and not knowing if I was ever ready to be a mom at that moment. And Anthony and I have been in a relationship for 5.5 years at this point. And so most people think that you plan to have a baby. And of course we have a great relationship and we're happy together, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're planning and ready for a baby. And so that was the hard part too, is that when we did tell people, everybody was so happy for us and they were so excited and they couldn't wait. And we were excited too, but we were also shitting bricks. We were also really scared because we were not prepared. We were not ready for this next step in our lives. We didn't feel like we were ready, but it turns out that we were. And so when I went to the doctor 2 weeks afterwards and we did the ultrasound, I was 8 weeks pregnant. And the baby was totally healthy. Everything was in order. The baby was where it was supposed to be in my uterus, and the heartbeat was strong, and everything was fine. And I was so worried for 2 weeks just to find out that he was perfectly fine, and so was I. And now, fast forward about a year later, I have a beautiful 5.5-month-old son, and I don't know how I got pregnant on an IUD, to be honest, but I did. To me, in my mind, it was God, it was fate, it was something working in my favor that knew exactly what I needed when I needed it, because Avery, my son, came at the most chaotic time in my life and the most difficult time in my life, and I had never felt so low before finding out that I was pregnant with him, and everything seemed like it was a mess and I felt like I was losing so much. And finding out that I was pregnant with him was the scariest thing and also the biggest blessing that could have ever happened to me. And when I did tell my family that I was pregnant, he brought us back together. He brought me and my family back together, and he is the reason why life is so amazingly beautiful right now today. And I could not picture my life without him. With all that being said, I have no idea how the fuck I got pregnant on an IUD, but it happened. And looking back, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to us. And luckily, we are so blessed to have so much family and friends who love and support us. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and please hit the subscribe button so that you can join the Curl fam and you can see my videos every week. Thanks guys, see you next time.